With me now is the Minister for Energy and the Environment, Josh Frydenberg. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Nice to be with you, David.
So what has happened here? Give us the backstory. This group, through the former Wallaby Nick Farr-Jones, has contacted the government saying they want to get involved in the coal-fired power plant at Liddell.
Well, as you know, last year, AGL met with the government about the future of Liddell. They had foreshadowed for some time that it was to close in 2022, and this is an asset that would be 50 years old by that time. Now, Liddell is important in the Australian energy mix because it meets more than 10% of New South Wales's energy demand. It powers more than 1 million homes and contributes to major industrial customers like the Tomago aluminium smelter.
You want to see it stay open for a little longer than that.
So we were concerned as to what would be the impact on the amount of reliable power in the system was the 1,800 megawatt Liddell power station to close in 2022. Bill Shorten said this was an issue for down the track. Mark Butler didn't even accept the premise of AEMO's original advice that there would be a shortfall. We said this was a very serious matter. Now, following the Prime Minister's intervention, by the way, at a meeting when the head of AGL actually offered up potentially to sell Liddell itself, AGL asked for 90 days to come back with a replacement plan for Liddell. Now, that replacement plan is in 3 stages. It involves a minor upgrade to their existing Bayswater coal-fired power plant of an additional 100 megawatts, as well as new gas-fired power facilities, more renewables including solar and wind, some demand response and some batteries. Now, the combination of which would be sufficient in the eyes of AEMO to meet the 850 megawatt shortfall in dispatchable power. That being said, AGL have only financially committed to a small part of the first stage, namely that 100 megawatt upgrade to Bayswater.
Not the rest of it.
Not the rest of it. So what we have said is we would like AGL to financially commit as soon as possible to those other stages. And we also point to the AEMO advice, which said if AGL has not financially committed, then they look to the National Energy Guarantee to meet that shortfall, because the National Energy Guarantee puts a premium on reliability.
And I'll come to that, but in the meantime, would you like to see the life of that coal-fired power plant extended, or indeed a new coal-fired power plant built?
Well, we've always said that if AGL was prepared to sell it to another party, that would be their commercial decision.
But would it be the government's preference?
Well, we would be pleased to see it sold to another
So
party.
along comes this Chinese company, contacts the Prime Minister's office. Were you aware of this?
I was aware that there had been expressions of interest. Don't forget, back last year publicly, Trevor St Baker and his group Delta had mentioned that they were interested. So I knew there was some interest, but it's up to those companies to directly approach AGL.
But clearly they wanted, according to Nick Farr-Jones, wanted the government to put some pressure on AGL as well here. So did you?
Well, we have said to AGL, you said to the Prime Minister you were prepared to sell it to another party, or to contemplate selling it to another party. That would obviously be one option, and we wouldn't stand in the way.
But did you say there's a Chinese bidder here? This group, they're well established,
we have left it to the company and this prospective bidder, not, you know,
so didn't raise this with AGL?
Well, it's for them. It's for them to actually do the work,
yeah, sure,
and to approach
do the deal.
AGL.
It's not a government-owned coal-fired.
That's right.
But this company, through Nick Farr-Jones, is saying, guys, can you help us out here? Put a bit of pressure on AGL. You know, let them know that we're keen. Did you do that? And why didn't you do it?
Because it's a... Well, firstly, we have actually taken the initiative here, David, to seek advice from the independent Australian energy market operator as to what would be the impact of the closure of Liddell. That advice is in, and it's contrary to what Labor's position was. We now know that the National Energy Guarantee can solve for that shortfall, and we also now know that if AGL was to financially commit to all stages, that could also solve for that shortfall. And we also know there's a backup plan that AEMO has, that if neither of those two things happen, then it may have to step into the market.
OK, but I still don't understand. If you're worried about the closure in 2022 of a coal-fired power plant at Liddell, you've got a Chinese bidder saying, I'll come and help. Can you please let AGL know, put a bit of pressure on them, Why wouldn't you do that?
Because that is one of the options. That is obviously
But
not
at least
the
tell
only
them
option.
about it. And
well, they can also make the direct contact if you're.
sure, but I don't see
if
what
you're
the harm
interested.
is. What's the harm in saying, look, here is a Chinese bidder. They've contacted us.
Yeah. Well, look, they know, AGL knows that there has been some interest. Those comments from Trevis and Baker,
So
this company, were very public.
Okay, but this is a different. This is a different
and
bidder,
so they're not
Chinese
out there.
bidder.
So it's clear that AGL would prefer to go through with their three-stage plan
Absolutely.
than to sell it to
Is
another
there a
party.
concern about a Chinese company owning a power asset?
Well, as you know, the Treasurer announced last year new rules around foreign investment when it comes to critical infrastructure. Obviously, energy is critical infrastructure. That's a proper evidence-based process, and I would allow those processes to run.
It's going to be harder for a Chinese company, or indeed any foreign-owned company.
We welcome foreign investment in this country. We welcome investment in our energy sector. It's actually necessary to have that level of investment in our energy sector, but there are proper processes which any prospective party with serious offers on the table would need to go through.
Tony Abbott and Barnaby Joyce raised this in the party room meeting today. Tony Abbott's been making the point privately and publicly for a while now. You're spending billions on Snowy Hydro. Why not on coal?
Well, firstly, Snowy Hydro has always been a government-owned asset. You go back to Menzies and Chifley, and obviously until recently partly owned by Victoria, New South Wales and of course the Commonwealth. We've now acquired 100% ownership. That is very different to us taking equity stakes in other power stations around the country. Snowy 2.0 is a nation-building renewable project.
Why is it different? I mean, there are still state-owned coal-fired power plants. Why don't you step in, buy them, beef them up, do what you need to do to keep them going?
Well, this is where we are ensuring through the National Energy Guarantee that we will have a technology-neutral approach.
But you're not there with that neg yet, and yet you are going ahead with the Snowy Hydro thing. I'm just wondering why you don't also do that.
Because the neg actually will not discriminate between these sources of generation, provided it's consistent with those two new obligations on the retailer, dispatchability, as well as helping to meet our Paris commitment. That's the critical aspect of the neg compared to, for example, the renewable energy target, which was industry policy designed to get more renewables into the system. The neg is technology neutral, and if you are bringing more gas into the system, or if you're bringing upgrades to coal-fired power stations or indeed renewables with storage, then that would all be okay.
So in simple terms, when Tony Abbott or anyone else says, why don't you spend some billions of dollars on coal-fired power, your answer is?
The National Energy Guarantee will give us the framework for the commercial businesses to make those independent decisions. Government spending its own money or taxpayers' money on this. Why don't you do that? We are investing heavily in Snowy 2.0.
Why not coal?
Priority. Well, firstly, the private sector is investing in coal. Just recently, David, Alinta bought Loy Yang B in Victoria for over $1 billion, which is a coal-fired power station.
So why isn't the government?
Well, because we have a market which is largely dominated by the private sector, and we want market forces to operate. But it's always been in government hands. But where the market doesn't deliver the outcomes of affordable, reliable power, that's where there needs to be interventions like we did in gas.
And the National Energy Guarantee, finally, you still need the states on board for this. Obviously, the South Australian victory for the Liberals helps a lot.
Yeah.
Is it just the ACT and the Greens Minister Shane Rattenbury here that's the holdout?
Look, we will have a frank and full discussion with energy ministers on the 20th of April. That's where we will have a design of the National Energy Guarantee presented to us by the Independent Energy Security Board. We don't take anything for granted, but what we do know is that the country needs investment certainty in the energy market. And the National Energy Guarantee for the first time integrates energy and climate policy effectively. It's been really well received by the big energy users, the big employers in our economy, the Rios, the BHPs, the BlueScopes, the Dow Chemicals, the Farmers Federation, as well as the energy producers themselves, and I think it's about time that the Labor Party got on board, particularly because under the National Energy Guarantee, independent modelling shows that the average Australian household will be $300 a year better off under that plan than they would be under Labor's, and we'll also see a big reduction in the wholesale electricity price, which is good news for our businesses.
Just finally, Tony Abbott made some of these points around coal while standing alongside Pauline Hanson today, who's launching her book and talking about how she has shown the old adage, you're always better the second time around, was his line. I'm sure plenty will be read into that, but his argument is that he's helping because he's trying to corral One Nation voters' preferences back to the Liberal Party. Do you agree? Is this helping the Liberal Party?
Well, look, I'm not going to go into those issues about personalities that you're referring to, other than to say Tony Abbott was the Prime Minister. I respect him for his contribution during that time. The party room chose Malcolm Turnbull. Malcolm Turnbull's got a lot of significant achievements to his name. I've got a full plate as his Energy and Environment Minister, and if we can land the National Energy Guarantee on top of what we've already done with networks, with gas, with retailers, we will see a more affordable, reliable energy system, and we would have gone a long way to cleaning up the mess Labor left us.
Clearly he still sees some possible future leadership, do you?
Those are matters for him.
All right, Josh Frydenberg, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.